Hello everybody, my name is Pablo Valderrama. I am a student of the extension courses at the Mastership of English as a Foreign Language at UCV University, and today I am going to talk about research methods in applied linguistics focused on researching pragmatics. Welcome. The general framework that we are going to follow goes through theoretical aspects, where we're gonna have a description and definition of pragmatics in English as a foreign language. Then we will learn a little bit about cross-cultural pragmatics and interlanguage pragmatics, typical stages in this research, where we're gonna answer this question: which aspect of pragmatics is to be investigated, what independent variables are to be investigated, what research instrument is to be used, and finally, how will data be analyzed? From theory to practice, we are going to make a comparisons of 3 research articles, focus on their structure, research methods, and major findings. Okay, pragmatics. According to Rover 2018, the study of pragmatics traditionally focuses on the relationship between language use and context, that is, how features of the external world, real-world context are reflected in the language used. Thus, pragmatics research in applied linguistics is mostly concerned with the relationship between language use on the one hand and the social and interpersonal context of interaction on the other. That's important for English as a foreign language because it allows to analyze conversation, second language testing and testing of second language, pragmatics, and it enhances the teaching of English when the students have a nice proficiency in the language. It helps them to acquire the right pragmatics to begin right conversations. Now, there are 2 kinds of research in pragmatics. We have the cross-cultural pragmatics, and we also have the interlanguage pragmatics. Cross-cultural pragmatics investigates differences in pragmatics based on first language background. Meanwhile, interlanguage pragmatics investigates how second language learners' knowledge and ability for use of target language pragmatics develops. It is important to bear in mind that pragmatics includes the study of how the interpretation of language depends on knowledge of the world, the study of how speakers understand the meaning of utterances, and the study of how the use of language is influenced by the relationship between relationships between speakers and hearers. This is so important because pragmatics is interested in what people mean by what they say rather than what words or phrases might, in their most literal sense, mean by themselves, which is, pragmatics is closely related to semantics, but it focuses its general attention on what is the main purpose of the person and how that person uses that context of those words in regarding power relationships or social distances or the degree of imposition. According to these 3 factors, the way in which we use words and communicate with other people changes. Alright, so there are 4 typical stages in this research. First of all, we are going to ask ourselves which aspects of pragmatics is to be investigated. And there we have different aspects. For example, speech ads. We're talking about a speech ads. We have to say that the major focus on pragmatics had been on speech ads in the traditional way. So investigators and researchers also always going to go through how requests, apologies, refusals, compliments, and compliment responses, suggestion, advice, agreement and disagreement, compliments, criticism, and so others factors take place within the communication. It also stresses the importance of politeness without regard to a specific speech act. It also investigates implicature, which is indirect or implied language use in our way of expression. And finally, it's also going to focus on conversation analysis, and that's the discursive orientation. Where requesting, apologizing, and disagreeing is seen as social phenomenon and is studied according to these factors. Well, going to the second stage of research in pragmatics, we're going to have the question: what independent variables are to be investigated? And we had to go back to the cross-cultural pragmatics and acquisitional or developmental pragmatics, where in the cross-cultural pragmatics they are going to divide groups, and usually the target group, the group under study, is going to be the considered as the independent variable, is going to be called L1 group. Meanwhile, when it regards to acquisition and the development of pragmatics in the second language, on the target language, usually words, the two variables, the independent variables. For example, they may have one group of native speakers and one group of non-native speakers that are acquiring the language. On stage 3, we will ask ourselves what research instrument variables is to be used. Now, the most used instrument in this pragmatics research is the discourse completion test, where participants are DCT consists of a situational prompt, which is followed by a gap for the participants to enter their responses. So usually in this kind of a test, you give the practitioners an instrument where they are going to feel according to the context they are given. They're going to fill the spaces. They are going to fill those spaces according to the information provided. For example, if you need to print a letter, but your printer is not working, you decide to ask your classmates. So you say, Jack, you can ask your classmate called Jack if he can allow you to use his printer. So you can say, hey Jack, how are you? And you will have a blank in the instrument to fill in. You can use, for example, can I use your printer? And the investigator and the researcher is going to assess the context variable of power, how is the social distance. In this case, the social distance is very low because you are talking about frames of the degree of imposition. That's what they are going to measure in this kind of instruments. It also have the role plays, where they try to give a natural conversation, that the practitioners to enroll in natural conversations, but still they want to it requires a lot of preparation on the participants, so it's less used than the one we were talking before. Then we have the stage 4. We're going to ask ourselves, how will data be analyzed? And that usually is according to CCSARP, which is the distribution of the discourse according to the purpose, intentions, and feelings of the speaker and the hearer. Well, we're going to analyze from theory to practice. We're going to talk about 3 different research articles in context. First of all, the principal features of English pragmatics in applied linguistics, which is found in the journal Advances in Language and Literary Studies. We have also the speech ads in professional maritime discourse, a pragmatic risk analysis of bridge team communication, directives and commissives in full mission simulation, and finally telling the story meaning making in a communicative narrative, although both last article found in the Journal of Pragmatics. Now, in the structure, they basically follow the same framework. They have an introduction, they have a body, and they go through a conclusions. In the body, they're gonna talk about methodology. The case of the first article, the author states that this is a study of contextual meaning depending on role variations. In the case of the second article, the authors are going to identify the possible miscommunication by singling out differences between locutionary and illocutionary speech acts. In the third article, the authors are going to examine to separate tellings of a shared political community narrative in a Belfast nationalist community using a pragmatics framework. Now, as I said, they're gonna describe the methodology and then the results. Okay, according to the methods, the pros and cons, the first article focuses attention in describing what speech acts are and what is politeness. It establishes the four maxims of conversation, which is quality, quantity, relevance, and manner. It is basically a meta pragmatics study because rather than apply its methods, describes them. The other methods used in the second article combines vertical corpus linguistics methods with horizontal pragmatics analysis. And it helps to notice risks of miscommunication, classifying and comparing both groups, native and non-native speakers uses of expressions. This research was carried out on the basis of recording simulation exercises and only considers verbal communication. The way we have the third part, it focuses on analysis and shared narrative in two settings rather than a self-contained narrative event. Three key points relevant to narrative pragmatics are highlighted. It is studied in an artificial manner. That is for the third article. Now, about the major findings, we have the study. The first article, the study of pragmatics, helps future researchers to govern their studies about factors of speaker's choice. It is the pragmatics that allows us to go and further investigate about provided meaning by going beyond to an apparent set of words without any ambiguity. Then we have major findings. We have mariners shall use coded language variety of English which aim to eliminate ambiguities by reducing lexical items and simplifying natural language structure. This is important a delicate communication training once a sufficient proficient level has been achieved. And finally, we have the third article. It is shown how community narrative operates as a shared sense, making resource for members. It is demonstrated that different discourse activities are used to realize the underlying template. Hence, this is not a description of narrative discourse. The narrative performances reflect power and the perceived purpose of the respective interviews, thereby providing a framework for identity positioning. Okay, as a final reflection based on the theory and practice, I may say that pragmatics research offers to apply linguistics a good framework of how to enroll itself in the practical aspects of language, mostly when it refers to English as a foreign language learning and acquisition process, because participants are invited to understand the social aspects of language that usually have to do with power, imposition, and they require social distance when communicating. This kind of study enhances the effectiveness when relating to others through a language that is not the mother tongue. Okay, there you have the references used in this presentation. And finally, I would like to say thank you so much for your kind attention. There is Pablo Gabriel Valderrama Esquivel, and there you have my email direction to contact me. Thank you so much.